Very good. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see everyone in person today, and welcome to those of us tuning in online. First off, we just want to welcome everyone to the community forum tonight. So the purpose of tonight's forum is to have yet another installment of input onto the phase one update of our Parks and Rec plan. So the purpose for tonight is to facilitate that in person, and as you've already received when you've checked in, we'll be getting that input starting tonight, and there'll be some facilitated conversation. Before we get too much further along, I'd like to recognize, I believe, all three of our councillors are here today. Councillor Natchoff, Councillor Byrne, and Councillor Edgerton. Thanks all for joining us. And I'm obviously Matthew Graham, Mayor of the Township. So anyways, we'll keep moving forward. So tonight's discussion is going to be facilitated by Mr. Robert Lockhart. So Mr. Lockhart is the consultant that's been retained by the township to conduct this effort. And like I said, this is just phase one of a three-phase effort that we'll be working through over the next year or so. But tonight's facilitation and the discussion therein is for this phase one focus. Mr. Lockhart is the president of the Rethink Group. He's been conducting and helping municipalities of all shapes and sizes with their rec plans since 1975, if I'm not mistaken. He is no stranger to the Township of Cappamonigan, having worked with us before, and he's also currently working with the City of Peterborough. So he's very familiar with the region and the recreational inventories that we have and need. So he's a very locally informed consultant, and we're very thankful for him working with us to take on this work. So that's enough for me. I'm actually in the process of attending another meeting that's about to wrap up, but I have to jump back there and we'll be back to listen. And that's what we're here to do. But thank you, Robert, for facilitating this discussion tonight. This is the hot one here. You're going to take
Can I bring this one on? Okay, that's great. Thank you, Graham, very much. And welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight and giving up your Leafs game, or maybe not, depending on what your perspective is. But and certainly beautiful weather outside as well. So thank you for coming. So it's my pleasure to be here. And as the mayor said, we're kind of at the halfway mark to our study. We're pretty well done our data gathering and analysis phase. And because of COVID, we weren't able to have this kind of in-person forum as part of our round one of our public consultation. So although we did, many kinds of surveys and we had lots of email conversations, telephone conversations with people in groups, we didn't have a chance to have this kind of get together. So we can now do that, and thank you for deciding to be able to come out tonight. So in terms of the purpose of tonight, well, I'm going to do the agenda first of all. Flip to the next one. Carly's going to run the slides. I'm going to give her a little signal, so don't worry about that. So we finished the welcome introductions. I'm going to do my presentation now, which should be 15 or 20 minutes, because it's really important to have some background information about not only what we found around all parks and recreation issues, but also what we've discovered about the arena, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to do that. Then there's going to be an hour for each of you, and I'm going to have you consolidate a bit to fill up all the tables before we get into the group discussion. But there'll be about an hour for you to talk about two things. One is, what are your top priority recreation facility and park improvements that you'd like to see happen in the township? That's sort of the first question. We have 20 minutes for that. And the second question is, taking 40 minutes, is to talk about the arena and look at the options for it and do some voting around it. And you're going to have your own personal survey to fill in at the end, and you're also going to do a group survey, a group vote on it as well. So we'll get some sense of the perspective that you have around the room. Then every table is going to do a quick report back, a 1-minuter, and then I've got some closing remarks. And with all good luck, we'll be out of here by 8:30. But it'll depend on how efficiently we're able to operate. So that's the way we're going to run the session tonight. The purpose of the forum is to provide we're ready to go. Yeah, the purpose of the forum is to provide an overview of the research and findings and conclusions in the preparation of the plan. And this represents phase one of our planning process. And I'll talk about phase two in a moment. And there's a background report, which is a work in progress document. We've put a version of it as of last month. Actually, it was March. That's on the township website. Every once in a while, we'll probably take that one down and put a newer version up to show you what we're doing, because we're gathering more information literally weekly, sometimes daily, and editing that report as we learn more. So it will be a living document right through to the end of the process at the end of this year, and then it will form part of the overall report, the background report, and the recommendations. The second thing we're going to do tonight is gather information about demand for Parks and Recreation, and the third is to talk about the Millbrook Arena. So as I mentioned, so that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. Now, Vision 2035, that's what we're calling this project, the Parks and Recreation Plan, because we want to be visionary, we want to be progressive, we want to look out to at least 2035 and a little bit beyond in terms of the big picture. But we're really trying to update. We're going to be updating the plan that was done in 2011 and add more detail and bring it up to date and look out another. We're also going to look out to 2051 because that is the full build out of the community. It's as far out as the population projections go. So we're going to give some broad direction that far out, but the main focus is going to be for the next 10 years. So we're going to do all of this research and background work, which I talked about. We're going to complete an inventory of parks and open space, and we're doing some mapping right now, and that is in work in progress and will be finished fairly soon. We prepared a profile of the community to understanding future growth as well. We've researched current demand and we're predicting future demand. And then we're going to prepare what we're calling the strategic action plan. And I'm going to give you a bit more detail on that in a minute, but it's the nuts and bolts of it. It's the plan itself, the recommendations that hopefully will guide council over the next decade and beyond around decision making. So phase one, all the research that I talked about, parks and open space, facilities, programming, the way services are provided, who's providing services, all of that is pretty well done. Community engagement, we've talked about as well, including surveys and this community forum. And additional work is going to be done as part of this phase as well. The map I talked about is in the works. We're working with the County of Peterborough to develop a map of parks and open space. Analysis findings and conclusions are done to date, and that will be added to as we continue to go. And we've also looked at the Millbrook Arena in a considerable detail, not myself so much as the engineers who've had a look at it, structural, mechanical, electrical, and also looking at hazardous materials that are in the arena. So that was done and a number of studies, and you'll see that at your table where we have a fact sheet on the arena showing the studies that have been done recently relating to it. We've also gathered public opinion up until now, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And certainly the decision about the future of the Millbrook Arena is going to have a very strong influence on how the rest of the plan unfolds, because if investment is made in it, there'll be less money to spend on other things. If it is preserved, then other facilities won't need to be built, or vice versa. So it all, and there's a couple of other dominoes that have to fall as well that will influence how the plan unfolds, and we hopefully will know more about that fairly soon. And we usually don't ask for a decision point in the middle of a project like this, but because of the impact of a decision about the arena, you can see how it will influence everything else that gets recommended. So that's why we're sort of coming to focus on that, and that's why it's so important. And it's also important to recognize that certain partnerships may or may not happen that are out there, potential for partnerships, because we may not need them, or you may need them, depending on which way you go. It's like, do this, do that, and so I need some direction, and we need some direction. And of course, what you invest in the arena, you won't be able to invest elsewhere. And that may be okay, but the reality is there's only so many dollars to spend all the way along the line. And how do you get the most impact for the resources that are available over the next decade and beyond? So that's phase one of the work. And then phase two, we're going to be, as I said, updating the background report. Additional park assessment is going to be done. We're actually going to walk around and look at every single park and do an assessment of it. Additional community engagement, which I'll talk about in the next slide. The recommendations are going to be founded on the planning context and the findings and conclusions, really the result of phase one. A belief statement about parks, recreation, and culture and arts. Guiding principles to give us something to anchor the plan. A vision that looks out about 20 years for what parks and recreation could look like in 20 years. And then we're going to do the strategic action plan, which is where the details are. So it's going to be recommendations dealing with leader services, with facilities, with parks and open space, programming, and implementation, right through to how we're going to fund this and timing around that. So that's the essence of what the plan is going to structure the plan and the kinds of things that it's going to contain. So as part of really flowing into phase 2, but really kind of part of phase 1 is some additional user group surveys that we're doing, and we're going to be doing some workshops as well. A second community forum is going to be held in the fall, where we bring the emerging plan back to the community and say we don't have it all finished yet, but we have enough of it out there that we need some feedback on it. We need some direction around it. So we're going to be doing that in the fall, and then we'll finish the plan toward the end of the year. And there's also, there's ongoing feedback through the township website. Anything that's posted up there, you can respond to and send a comment back either to the township or to me directly, and they will be included in the mix. I've already received some submissions from groups and individuals, and that goes into the record that will go into the background report around public input to the process. So that's going to be very important. Now, there could be a phase 3, as the mayor talked about a phase 3, and it's not approved by council yet, but whatever comes out of this plan, some more details going to have to be added in a few areas. So, for example, whatever happens with the arena, if the vote is to keep the arena, then obviously you're going to have some detailed work around how you actually do that and what that means. If the arena is not going to stay, then you need to know what to do with the property in terms of a park plan or another use that may happen to it. The remaining lands at the Cabot-Montney Community Center, the land behind it, we have to determine how best to use that. And you can see how one would influence the other. So that's why we need to know what's going on. And there may be some other parks like Maple Leaf, like Old Millbrook School, a potential sports park, and maybe others that we may need to do a design for or plan for. And that'll be determined next year when we finish phase 2 and the main plan is finished. So it's kind of like in 3 phases. Research and analysis, recommendation, and then some detailed work around 3 or 4 areas or 2 or 3 areas that are really important to folks to put more attention on before you can move forward to begin to roll out the recommendations on them. So that's how that's going to work. All right, enough about the process. Give me just a second here. I'm going to wet my whistle. I know that probably dated me. All right, so key characteristics about the community. We looked at a lot of data, and I'm just going to give you a couple things here. So you're running at just over 10,000 people right now. Until recently, you've been growing pretty slowly, but in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, growth has accelerated up into close to 3% per year, which is about 3 times the provincial average. So that's quite a growth rate. The age profile, you've been getting a little younger lately because of the influx of new residents, largely in their family forming years. But the projections are that if you look out to 2051, which is our far time horizon, you're going to get a lot older, because as the baby boom and their children age, the older adult population is going to triple in size. And so we have to keep that in mind, because that's going to influence the demand for leisure and the kinds of facilities we're going to need. So ball diamonds may not be as important as the senior center. So we have to just recognize that there's going to be a gradual graying of the population as we look out. And we need to look out 10 to 20 years into the future as we're making decisions today. So it's really important, just as the school board does and every other organization that is providing service to the community. So looking ahead to 2051, which is, as I said, our sort of far out time horizon. So 94% of all the new residential growth is targeted for the Millbrook area. And the boundary will obviously get a little bit larger to be able to accommodate that. And the remainder will go into the 7 hamlets. We're not sure what's going to happen with the rural areas, depending on what the provincial policy is around that. It's going a bit like this right now. So we're not sure where it's going to land, but that's generally what it's going to be. So the main focus is going to be within the Millbrook area. Average population growth, a little over 2% per year. If you sort of divide the roughly 18,000, 10 to 18, that works out to about that per year. So by the time we get to 2051, going to be at about 18,000, and that's the servicing capacity of the municipality right now. So it can't grow beyond that unless servicing is expanded. And I talked about aging considerably and about what the impact that's going to have on recreation services eventually. So looking at demand assessments is really important, because you can't make any recommendations about facility requirements and programming, et cetera, and parkland requirements unless you know what demand is. So we've analyzed facility utilization. We've applied local and national leisure trends, because there are trends out there that are beyond your municipality that will eventually influence what's going on here. We completed a household survey last summer, 319 responses, and it was a household survey. So when you look at who lived in households, that really represented about 900 residents, which is about 10% of your population. Any survey that hits around 10% is doing a pretty good job. And so that was done at the time, was widely advertised through an article in the Melbourne Times, and lots of social media posts twice a week. I think 22 different times during the run of the survey, it was promoted out into the community. We've had ongoing correspondence with individuals, groups, and organizations. And as I said, some submissions have been received and more are anticipated. Now, in addition, we're going to be doing some more detailed group-specific surveys. They are out right now. And as we identify other groups that should be consulted, we are going to send them a survey as well. And in addition to that, we'll be doing some meetings and workshops. One of the ones that I'm really wanting to do is one around arts and culture, because we don't know a lot about arts and culture in this community. We know lots about sport. We don't know a lot about arts and culture. So we'd like to do something around arts and culture. We're probably going to bring, users of playing fields and ball diamonds together, and we'll see what other groups need to be talked to or consulted with. And we want to bring some ideas forward at the time so we can have some fulsome discussion about the possibilities, because we want you to be part of the decision about what's the best course of action for your own community. That's really critical. And of course, the community forum at the end or near the end, I've mentioned already, will be sort of wrap up well, of course, this community forum, and then the one that'll follow near the end. We'll wrap up the consultation for the project. So looking at unmet and growing demand, this is what we know so far. So looking at all of the data we've collected, including some of the trends that we're looking at. So some of this is looking ahead 5 or 10 years, but the major market gaps are children, including preschool, adults, and older adults. So youth is served pretty well in the community, but the other age groups are served less well. And so we want to concentrate on that. Some of the top program and facility needs and predictions are the following. And these not all these can be met by the township, even though the residents would love to see it. It all can't be afforded by a township of 10,000 people. So aquatic facilities was number one, and programs. Preschool and children's facilities and programming. More and better trails, nature parks, more of them. More and better playgrounds, enhanced farmers market, outdoor skating rink, youth recreation center, fitness facilities and wellness facilities and programming. More and better picnic areas and pavilions. Multi-purpose outdoor sport and basketball courts. Older adult recreation center and programming, however that might be able to be configured. More larger rectangular fields for soccer and other field users. Gymnasium and gym sports were mentioned quite often. Creative and performing arts, programming and events. Better baseball, softball diamonds. Racket sports, tennis, pickleball, gym sports, both current and growing. And indoor multi-purpose program and meeting rooms, and that's a growing need. And that's not all of it. That's just sort of the top half of the list of all the data we've collected so far. I could put 50 or 55 items on that list in terms of programs and facility types that there was demand shown for, but I've just picked the top ones to share with you tonight. And that's not just out of the household survey, that's out of all the information we've collected tonight. And the first question that I want you to address tonight is, what are your ideas for the need for more facilities and parks in the community? So we'll add that to the list. So out of the survey, 63% of households said that only some of their leisure needs are being met by the township. 3% said that all were, and over 90% said that, so for over 90% available programs, facilities for the main reason for going elsewhere, outside of the township. 90% of residents would like to see parks and recreation services become a higher priority of the municipality. And user groups told us about the facilities they use, their use patterns, both in the township and elsewhere, the positives and challenges, as well as current and future demand. And more will be learned in phase 2. So the only recommendation that we've made so far, and you may think we've made lots of recommendations, we've only made one, and that we had to categorize parkland so that we could do the analysis of it. So looking at your community, we've come up with 3 categories. The first one is natural heritage open space, of which you have a lot, and you're going to have a lot more under public ownership going forward. And limited public access on those lands because some of them are sensitive, but some passive recreation trails and picnic areas and whatnot are possible. Community parks are your larger parks that you would travel across the community to use. and they're mostly for high-level specialized facilities other activities. And then neighborhood parks are your smaller, less intensively developed parks, an acre, half an acre in size kind of thing, of which includes walkways within the neighborhood are all part of that mix. So those are the 3 levels of parkland that fit well within your community. And we're going to build the recommendations around those levels, and the analysis we've done is of them. Now, some of your parks are a combination of 2 or 3 of those categories, like Peace Park and Old Millbrook School Park are combinations of those, and others as well. There are some that are simply one of them. They're a neighborhood park, or they're a community park, or they're a natural heritage park, but some are a combination of 2 or 3. Now, some of the positive attributes, I want to start with the positives. The new community center is one of them, obviously. Enhanced leader service delivery through increased staffing and the role of what the municipality can provide and do is a great improvement. The trail system, one of the top things that people talked about in terms of value to the community was the trail system. Very, very strong and very important. The large amount of natural heritage open space, the large amount of community level parkland, even though not all of it can be built on, a lot of it is natural heritage land as well. And there's been a very positive trend in new facilities and parkland development, with all of the new ones being high quality and certainly higher quality than you've been able to provide in the past. And you basically raised the bar for what future parks should be like in the community. And that's positive. Not every community can say that their newest parks and facilities are raising the bar. In your case, they definitely are. And that's a tribute to the decision-making that's been made. Okay, now some of the challenges, and there are some. So as the township transitions from a small population and largely rural municipality, the expectations for quantity, quality, type of facilities, parks and programming will continue to increase, especially within the Millbrook settlement area, which will expand and is becoming more urban in nature. So we're seeing a shift in the community, and the plan has to respond to that. There's also, when you look at neighborhood parkland, a real shortage of it. As I said, there's lots of community level parkland, but there's not a lot of neighborhood parkland. Within the Millbrook settlement area, there's only one neighborhood park. The rest are other levels of parkland. And so that's something we need to try to address in the plan. How do we do that? And so we've got some ideas, and we'll see what we can roll out. And as in the case in most communities, even in new residential development, we're not getting the kind of parkland that we need to support the needs of the community. Not nearly enough of it, and not enough quality as well. And this is not a knock against your community. It's everywhere that's the case. And it's a real problem. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. Some of it's Planning Act related, some of Bill 23. There's a whole lot of things going on that are making it more difficult for us to get quality parkland in our communities. And there's also a shortage of some of the types of facilities that exist today. Things like rectangular fields, indoor multi-purpose space, a field house of some type, some adult and older adult facilities we're short of or are going to be. Some types of facilities that are in high and growing demand are not available in the town. Obviously, things like aquatic facilities, gymnasium, fitness facility, various types of racket sports, various older adult facilities, creative and performing arts facilities, and venues are not here, but not all can be provided by the township. That's why it's important to look to others to help. We're going to need to look at partnerships as a possibility, and maybe look at other municipalities to provide some of the services that residents here would like to have, and you can't afford to have. You just can't at 10,000 population. You're lucky enough to have a major city that's north of you, and also communities along the lakeshore and off to the west, who provide some specialized facilities and bigger facilities that you will need a much larger population to support. So you're fortunate to be sitting right in the middle of all of that. And although there's a bit of travel involved, it's not horrendous. And it may be the compromise that you're going to have to work with. So I mentioned about partnerships with the City of Peterborough. So things like an indoor aquatic facility, Peterborough is likely to build a new indoor aquatic facility in the next 5 years or so. A pump bike track, major performance facilities, etc. So there's a lot of things happening in Peterborough, because I'm working with them right now on all of their facility planning, that if some of that goes through, it's going to be built for the whole region to use. And that's where I'm saying we don't have to do it all within the boundaries of your township. Now, except for Highlands, Cedar Valley, and the developed portion of the Catamount Community Center, your other parks could really benefit from some upgrades and rejuvenation. And so we're going to be looking at that and seeing what we can recommend, what can be afforded to do as well. Ontario's accessibility standards also kick in. So whether you're an outdoor space or an indoor space, you have to comply with Ontario's new standard. For every indoor space, you have to be fully accessible by 2025. That's a couple of years away. And some of your facilities do not meet the accessibility standards, particularly your old arena. So that's something to think about. Although there's a good deal of community level parkland, not all of it is table land. So at some point, if you're going to need room for another ball diamond, more soccer fields down the road, you may need to acquire somehow another park, an active sports park, something like Maple Leaf Park, a second one, to meet the needs of the additional population that's going to be moving into your community going forward. So we have to think about that now. You can't wait till it's too late. You've got to think about where that might be, how you might do that, what kind of arrangement you might be able to make. Maybe there's a partnership opportunity that you can exercise so you don't have to buy the land. You don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's going to flag the need for more table land, or you'll have no place to put your facilities. Just ask soccer how difficult it is to find a place to put another soccer field. Very difficult. So we'll be looking at that. The ability to acquire sufficient neighborhood parkland. We have some ideas about how we might be able to work within your existing communities to address some of that. And there may be some policies that we'll have to develop, either as part of this plan or to the new official plan or otherwise, to give the community municipality more leverage with the development industry to hopefully get some better parkland going forward. We'll see how that plays out. The clamps have been put on that a bit with Bill 23. It's going to make it more difficult, but we'll see what can be done. We'll be doing everything we can to help the municipality do the best possible looking forward. Also, a small community like Cavan Monaghan has a lot of financial challenges. When you look at your tax base compared to your population, you have less commercial and industrial development than you might like to have. You like to have an 80-20 mix if you can. When you look at roads and protective services and water and wastewater, they're the top priority. They get the resources first, and whatever's left ends up with the other services like parks and recreation. So it's hard to fund some of these other services with so much of it being committed to other types of facilities and services in the community. And increasing expectations of new residents, and the expressed desire for the types of facilities that only a larger community can provide, and the challenge of replacing lost development charges and parkland dedication as a result of Bill 23. So that's a really important thing that we really can't do anything about, but you've got to find a way to recognize the fact that you're going to be working with less than you were last year. Opportunities. I'd like to end with opportunity, because this is where we can think about the possibilities. So partnerships and strategic alliances are going to be very important, and there are a number of them out there. So I wanted to mention just briefly about the Public School Board and Crestwood Secondary School, and the proposal that is being developed there for a major facility. The board has not approved anything yet, but it has certainly been talked about strongly, and plans are being drawn up about it. So imagine a brand new football field, artificial turf with a dome over it that would be year-round use. You could put 3 indoor soccer fields inside that facility by netting it off 3 ways, and you play crossways. As well, there possibly a baseball diamond. Beach volleyball is going to happen this summer regardless. They've already got the money for it. It's going to go ahead. The tennis courts may be refurbished as well. There are 2 tired tennis courts there that would certainly benefit from a facelift. So you'll end up with a very interesting facility there that the city of Peterborough and this township might be able to work with the school board to make happen, to invest in collectively, and then have guaranteed access to a certain number of hours per week to be able to use it. So that's out there, and we're actively talking about it with the board, as are some of the user groups in this community and in Peterborough and councils as well. So that's one project. The other one is City of Peterborough has a whole number of projects that they're working that are high level that would meet some of the needs of your community, everything from indoor swimming to a pump bike track and others as well that are on the books and maybe happen. We're doing the planning for it right now. There may be some federal provincial grants available, and of course the remaining lands at the Cavan Monaghan Community Center are also another asset, an opportunity that we need to figure out what to do with. And you can see why one decision affects another decision around how best to work with the land that's left there. A couple of images of what you would do if you were to dome a football field. This is actually a soccer field, but there's an indoor and outdoor shot of a couple there around North America. Another one, this one is in Finland, but it just gives you a sense if you covered a soccer field, how big it is, but that is how you would do it if you were to do a dome. And that's one way to do it. There are other ways to do it as well, but that's certainly one way that you could do it. I just thought I'd throw those images up so you get a bit of a sense of the scale of a facility like this and how it might work. There are other opportunities to be able to augment neighborhood parkland and natural heritage open space. You have a lot of them, particularly within the Millbrook settlement area. Some of it is already within public hands, and much more of it will come into public hands as the residential communities are approved and start to get built. And there's a great chance to be able to tie that together with the enhanced trail system and protect those lands for passive recreation uses. And some of them will be so sensitive that you can't use them at all, but you can certainly look at them and you know they're there. So lots of opportunities there that you can take advantage of. Many communities would love to have that opportunity. So you have it already. Now the Millbrook Arena and site is another opportunity, depending on which way it goes. So a recent engineering report has estimated that over $5 million is going to be needed to keep it open for another 25 years as it is, without any improvements to it other than accessibility upgrades, which have to be done, and any other repairs that have to be done to keep it structurally safe and functioning as a facility. I mentioned the household survey, and what we asked it, one of the questions in it was to show us your degree of support for 4 different options for it. So one of them was to invest $5.25 million into the facility to keep it going for another 25 years. The other was to invest more than that, and we don't know how much more, to not only keep it going, but to enhance the interior of it. Maybe you can redivide it up. Maybe you can reuse some of the spaces that are not being used anymore for other things like program rooms, et cetera. Without having an architect walk through it, we don't know what's possible. And that wasn't invested in, but we know it'll cost more to do that. The third would be to replace the building with a downtown park and incorporate that park into all of the other open space that's around there. And there's a lot of it. And so you can imagine a large open space campus right in the edge of your downtown, developed for not sports activities, but lots of other community activities, everything from a gazebo for performing arts to outdoor skating, to any number of things. We don't know yet, but there's a lot of possibilities for that. And the fourth would be to sell the property for commercial and or residential development. So those are the 4 options that we put out there. And the survey residents, 82% said they liked the park option the best. And the other 2 options got less support, between 18 and 29% in terms of positive support. So that's how that went, okay? And as I told everyone, when I watched the survey results come in, from the first 25 surveys to the final, we got to 319, the number didn't change more than 5%. That ratio of support for one option over another was similar all the way through, which gave us considerable confidence in what we were hearing and sampling of the survey. So that looks strong to us. Normally that doesn't happen, but it was very, very strong in this particular instance. Okay, so a few more things to consider about the arena, and then we're going to get into your discussion period. So the poor and deteriorating physical condition of the building. And if you read the technical reports, you will see what's going on below the surface in the building. Accessibility deficiencies have to be met by 2025. And that's an $800,000 investment if it includes an elevator to the 2nd floor. If it doesn't include an elevator, it will be less than that. And we're going to ask the engineers for a number. It could be half of that, but it's certainly a lot that has to be done if you're going to keep the doors open into 2025. So that's something to keep in mind. A designated substance analysis was done very recently, and it found mold in the building, even though the air is okay right now, but it found mold in the ceiling, in the insulation throughout the whole building, and that has to be removed. And that wasn't part of the cost, 5.25 million, because that wasn't known about at the time. So that's something else that has come up more recently. The playing surface is certainly undersized, and those who use it know that. It's not your standard arena or today's arena size. The facility is underutilized, only about 57% of the prime time. I've got 15 here, but it's actually up to 57 now, some new numbers, but it's still only during the spring, winter, and fall. Nothing happens in the summer, and no non-prime time use is being made of the facility. The second floor is not available for public use. Very small site, about an acre in size, and very limited parking, and it's in a floodplain. We talked about the 5.25 million to keep it open for another 25 years, but not change it substantially. Much more is going to be needed if you want to increase its appeal and usability. You've got a little over $700,000 from the federal and provincial government toward renovating it. That's some money that would be available to do some of the work. We've asked a firm who does demolition what it would cost to take the building down, and at least 200,000 would be involved in that. So it would likely be more than that, but that's the minimum. And as well, council has made it very clear that they want to keep the building open in the fall, winter, and spring, as long as it's financially practical and it's safe to do so. So that's a directive of council right now. So that's already in place. And I mentioned about the financial implications of if you spend money here, you can't spend any money there, and vice versa. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about the arena and options for the community in general. Okay, I'm done my presentation. That's the highlights of over 100 pages of background research and analysis. Now it's time for you to have your discussion. And we have two topics. As I mentioned before, one of them is talk to us about recreation facilities and parks that you think are going to be needed or need to be improved in the community. And the other part of it is to discuss the options for the arena. At each table, I just should have mentioned there's an attendance sheet. I want you all to make sure you fill that in so we know who's here. And also, if you want to talk about your favorite leisure activities, put that in here as well. We're going to collect these at the end so we have a complete head count of how many were here. That's important. And also, when you start your discussion, just introduce yourselves. Before we begin, we're going to have you consolidate the tables a bit as well. We don't want to have 3 people at a table because you can't have a very good discussion, especially if you all have the same interest. So we'll ask you to at least join up and reduce the number of tables. That's going to be important. Now, at the table, there's a handout, which we didn't do one for everyone because we didn't know how many people were coming, but there are a couple at each table that you can share. And the agenda's on there, the questions are on there. Some information about the arena is there, and there's also a personal survey. So at the end of your discussion, we want each of you to fill this in, and we'll collect them all. And it's your personal kind of silent vote on what you think. We're also going to ask each group to come up with their priority, but we want you individually to give us your priority as well, and we'll pick all those up at the end and add that to the mix. So that's going to be important. Now I want you to listen for a second. We need, at each table, we need someone who is willing to sort of be the leader and take notes. We've got a note-taking template at each table to make it easy for you. Just, do your first question, do the second question. And then we need someone who's willing to stand up for 1 minute and give us the highlights of what you talked about. It may even be less than 1 minute, whatever you want. And so we'll do that at the end. So it's going to be the report back at the end, and we'll have, because we need to hear what each group had to say. So that's going to be important. And the last thing is we will circulate. We don't want to get drawn in answering a lot of long questions because that'll take away from your discussion period. But if there's something that you absolutely have to know, we'll try to answer it quickly and get you right back to your discussion again. And we're also going to try to keep you on time. That's going to be another important thing to be able to do. So I think, so the first question we've talked about, I'm going to leave this up for you. And the second question we know about as well, and I'll leave that up when we get there. And the last thing I'm going to say is some conversation guidelines. So share ideas in a respectful manner. Okay, you're all equal at the table, and listen to each other. Speak one person at a time. Listen to be understood. Be open to different points of view, and there will be around some of the tables. Value everyone's ideas and experiences. Ask for clarification if you don't understand, and focus on the big picture and the possibilities. Try not to get stuck in the weeds. So that's kind of like your marching orders to work at your tables to get the most out of the discussion as you possibly can. So I'm going to let you go now and get going on your presentation, on your discussion. Yes. Yes. So those of you who are online, You don't want to wait around for 45 minutes to an hour till everyone has their table discussion. So what we want you to do is simply look at the first question on facility requirements that you think, and send us in that information through the link that is available, and also let us know what your first choice is around the options for the arena. And we will collect all that information and add it to the mix of the discussion here tonight. Do we know how many people are online? Do we know how many people are on? About 10? Okay, all right, and welcome to all of you. So, all right, so now we need to consolidate, so please join some tables here. I don't know how you want to do it, but join up. Don't be shy.
Can I get everybody's attention up here? Hi there, can I get everybody's attention? Thank you. It sounds like we're having great discussion. To keep the ball going, we'd like to go on to question number 2. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, well, we have to. So if you guys could all go into question number 2, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we are about ready to do the report back. I think everybody's ready. Okay, so hello. We need to do the report back. I'm going to start with table 1. I'm going to start with table 1, which is over here to my left. So table 1. Can't get table 1's attention. Yeah, isn't that table 1? Oh, is it? Oh, sorry, you moved, you changed on me. Okay. All right. Doesn't matter. Just
Can I get everybody's attention? We're going to start with the group discussions. We're going to start with table 2. So if everybody could just listen to what they have to say. You get 1 minute each.
Carla, John, Angela, Dan, and myself, Maureen. Carla's top priority, in part because she works in the library, but also because she sees the need, is to expand library services and to make the library even more accessible and appetizing for the different members of the community who are moving here and the different age groups who are beginning to grow and go through the library. John is relatively new to the community and brought all kinds of fantastic ideas about cooperative partnerships that he had seen working in other areas with corporate partnership, but also partnership between existing entities in each community in which he'd lived. He sees a lot of downtown vacant property that could be put to good use. He sees the Harvest Playground built by the church as being very well used, but not perhaps optimally placed, given that it's sort of within a parking lot. It and other neighborhood parks that are built of that type could be nicely landscaped and shaded and that kind of thing. Angela, as we all know, comes to us with a very strong advocacy for soccer and fantastic success in that area. She and the club went from 400 active members of all ages, really, but very small tykes to older youth and young adults. And now they have 1,500 soccer members, far more than the 200 hockey members here in town. So it does, I don't think this is a secret, it does look as if Crestwood will build a facility of some sort, but it won't even begin to touch what they need, both in the way of outdoor sites and indoor sites. So the soccer club has had a history of very successful partnerships with government, township, and the Peterborough Timbermen to obtain facility upgrades, but also to obtain Trillium grants, and they would continue to do so. They would capitalize even more so on their success if they had more land on which they could then build proper facilities. Could either be bubble domes, some of those could be multi-use, others could be green building, model building types that the township could be very proud of. Dan and I grew up in a community where there was an outdoor pool, a large, very functional outdoor pool at which there was youth employment every summer, lifeguard training. There were adult, small child, and teen activities all summer long, and everyone learned to swim there. Most of us who brought our children up in Millbrook relied on a private pool, Mel Neal's pool, which was on Fallis Line. And she ran all of our kids through swim training, but also through much of the Royal Lifeguard. This is, by the way, where you get nurses, paramedics, doctors. That's where they come from, is that type of background. So if your township isn't providing that kind of training, you're not going to get the healthcare services that you need in the future. So that, I think, covers all of us. Our chosen option quite clearly was 3, that we felt that the building should be replaced. Dan and I feel that, even though we have many happy memories in that building, playing hockey, watching hockey, public skating, figure skating. We love that building, but we feel it's very much served its purpose and it needs to be retired, with the caveat that it has to remain in use and in place until the soccer club has sufficient indoor options to supply the needs for their growing membership. And the single thing they need most is land, and that is the townships to provide. So both of us are soccer lovers. It is the beautiful game. It's growing and affordable. And it too, in providing kids with refereeing opportunities and opportunities as they grow in the game to become coaches, is another leadership sort of pipeline for our youth here in the township. So I'll leave it at that, I think. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That felt like a minute. It felt like a minute. Thank you.
Hi. We at our table, Kathy, George, Rob, and myself, and we had Rob came and went. So, is that good? So anyway, I'll be down to a minute. We applaud and said very much and reinforced a lot of the things that Maureen was saying from her table. Certainly the whole idea of the arena and making sure that the soccer club does have some other place to go. Also the whole idea of using the library. We explored a lot about partnerships, including better partnerships and ensuring that we are doing as much as we possibly can with the developers. Certainly we looked at the Crestwood School Board potential partnership for the soccer place there. Very specific things that we were looking at in terms of the improved and new facilities included meeting places. We felt that we need more meeting places. We need in-village programs. We had a lot of discussion about to what extent do people come from somewhere, come from away to come here, or to what extent do we actually have people that are using the facilities here from the village. So we had that discussion. So playground downtown, we recognize there is not that downtown. Wondered another partnership we looked at, thinking of the Fair Board, and we appreciate that only a percentage of the area up at the fair belongs to the township and the rest does belong to the Fair Board, but maybe there's an opportunity there to explore that. One of the things we thought maybe if, you won't be surprised that the majority of us wanted the whole idea of a new facility or to do something with the arena area. Perhaps a small community events venue for 100, 150 people. We were thinking about that. And obviously, whatever we do, we need to recognize that downtown parking needs need to be addressed with whatever it is that we're doing. And my own little commercial is to have accessible for wheelchair, for walkers, park areas downtown in the village. 3 to 1. 3 of us were interested in option 3 and 1 for option 1.
So, yeah, I think everything that we've heard from the other two tables, our table would certainly concur with as well. We got into a pretty animated and focused discussion around the dome and the loss of the arena and the need to replace that with a some sort of structure so that the indoor soccer could continue. There were certainly some people at our table that felt very strongly about that, and so you have to absolutely recognize that. And I think we were all in concurrence that made all the sense in the world. However, there were some other ideas that were floated as well, a performance space. So I think that's sort of in line with what was talked about, this sort of the idea of a space where 100, 150 people could come together for whatever reasons. And also for meeting spaces and things like that. And a pool came up. We know the problems, and we talked about the problems with having a pool in this community, but it doesn't take away from the fact that there's a lot of people that would love to have access to that, and it's something we don't have. It was also outdoor soccer fields, not just to focus on the indoor, but more space for outdoor soccer fields as well, was part of our discussion. And just to go back to the dome, a lot of discussion around that, but certainly also the feeling that the domes can be very problematic, and that preferable would be a more permanent structure, and that quite possibly it would be worthwhile to look at, if it was at all financially feasible, to create a permanent indoor structure for soccer, but for all kinds of other things as well, rather than a dome, which would probably have a shelf life. So I think that was the basis of our discussion. Did I miss anything important?
Voting.
Oh, the voting. We voted, 6 of the 7 of us voted for option 3, which was to, yeah, Bob, you know what option 3 is. 1 abstained, but it wasn't that she was opposed to option 3, but very much wanted to express her concern that she doesn't want to see the arena torn down without alternatives being put in place. And I think we all can accept that. Yeah.
Oh, Simon. All right, are you presenting? All right.
Yes, thank you. So we had a good discussion here around the current users of the facility. We seemed to come to predominant agreement. We voted option 5.3 to option 3.1. Option 5 being it would be more responsible to do nothing at this time. until the existing user groups are accommodated. With the provision for more detail, though we didn't get into the what that detail would be. Perhaps that would be a discussion to have. I think that's the nature of a discussion, really. Pardon me? What other? Sorry, Al. So sorry, question one was, we talked about the need for a drop-in center to accommodate youth and seniors, for a mental health indoor-outdoor facility space for both structured and unstructured activities. We had a discussion around multi-use field space, indoor-outdoor, the fact that right now the soccer group is repurposing existing facilities and fields. We had a discussion around how communities benefit from gymnasiums, desire for gymnasiums to support racket sports, multi-use. We had a discussion around a value of having a band shell or picnic shelter within the community, beautifying existing spaces like our library parks, our neighborhood parks. We also talked about the need for meeting space for large meetings and community events. We had a discussion around that we don't have a two-pad arena in the community, and that would be desirable, although I don't believe it's possible at this time. Discussion around trails, expansion of trails and open space. And there's some recognition amongst the group of just a lack of parking currently in the village core, or the downtown, or the business heritage district.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to, before I do my wrap-up comments here, I want to thank all of you for participating in a wholesome discussion. I know you all didn't agree with one another, and there seemed to be quite a variety of opinion around each table, and that's better than we could hope for. I want to particularly thank the folks who volunteered to take notes and lead the group and report back. Without you, we couldn't have done this. It sounds like an Academy Award thing, but it's really important that we recognize the folks who stepped up, and I hope you're able to participate in the discussion as well. So that's really important. So where do we go from here? Well, all of the notes will be transcribed, and we're then going to put them all together in a package to see what the total of question number one really added up to, and what your comments about the options, what they look like, the breadth of those will all be consolidated. And then we're going to look at your personal votes more than your group vote. But I really wanted to hear what each table thought. But individually, that's going to be important as well. So we'll add those up in addition. We're going to add that to everything we know about demand so far. We're going to go back into the background report and add all that in. And there's going to be a separate appendix in the background report to report on the results of this forum. So it will have its own piece within the document. But then we're going to blend it all together with everything else we know to help us to understand what demand is and what the community is saying. So that's going to be very important. Back on March the 20th, I presented to council what we knew at that time about the background report. The results of this forum and other information is going to be brought back to council on June the 5th. And we're hoping that at that time, that some direction from council will be available to us, because as we know, one domino affects another domino, and we really need to know if there's a sense of how we can move forward on this and what it's going to mean for the rest of the plan. So that will then give us direction, and we'll be able to then begin to develop the recommendations. I've only written one so far, and that was the park hierarchy. So the rest are still sitting there in limbo, and we'll see where that goes. I mentioned before, but the second community forum in the fall is going to be very important. The draft plan will then be finalized and reviewed by staff and council, and any recommendations for 2024 might even come out earlier. So there may be some high priority projects that are so obvious that they could inform the budget for 2024 whenever it is needed, whenever the information is needed. We hopefully we can spin that forward and provide staff with some things to put in the budget for next year. And that will, hopefully we'll wrap up phase 2 at that point, and then we'll see where phase 3 goes. It's at council's direction. If they want to do a phase 3 around looking in more detail at the items that we talked about earlier, and we'll see where that goes and what happens there. But we don't have approval for that yet, but that is an item that's on our list. So that wraps up what we need to do. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. If any of you have any thing you want to send to us that you didn't get expressed at your table with more detail than you wanted to provide, make sure we get it either through staff or through me directly, and we'll read everything. If you want to make it a formal submission, it will actually go in the report in the appendix, and we'll be able to do that as well. So just feel free to express yourself every way that you possibly can, and we will look at all of that. So did you want to have a wrap-up comment, Mayor? Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
No, just thank everyone for attending and submitting their comments. It's obviously great, valuable. It's nice to have everyone together in this room, and having this as a public, actually in-person dialogue is really beneficial. So thanks for taking the time with all of the competing other events going on this evening. So we're happy you chose to stay with us. Thank you, Robert, for the facilitation, and thanks staff for all the work organizing and helping get this thing set up for tonight. Safe trip home, everyone.
And one last point from me, make sure you fill in your survey. It's your personal voice, and we're going to collect them all and add them up. So please do that. We'll pick them all up as you leave. Thank you.